And now we'll move on to our next speaker. She is Julia Samson, recently graduated as an NCAA Division I student athlete from Columbia University with a bachelor's degree in sustainable development. Julia is currently working as a project management analyst at BNP Paribas. Good morning, Julia, and welcome to the program today.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you so much for the kind introduction. And of course, thank you so much to Peter Fusaro, who has been a wonderful mentor to me, for extending this opportunity to speak alongside all of you today. It is an absolute pleasure and such a meaningful experience for me as a young professional to be partaking in this global conversation with all of you panel leaders within sustainability. So today I'll be speaking with you all as a member of Gen Z, a young professional, and a recent college graduate with a degree in and passion for sustainable development. But firstly, I want to acknowledge that I will not be speaking for any entity beyond myself and beyond my personal experience. But my sole intention today is just to genuinely reflect what sustainability means to my generation, and to hopefully be able to provide some actionable insights that may be implemented going forward. But to put it frankly, I feel that my generation, both millennials and Gen Z, viewed sustainability as an existential threat to the lives and prospects of young people. It is not a fringe interest or aspirational vision, but it is a massive looming threat that has become increasingly insurmountable. And that is and will be a defining challenge for the success of my generation. And then now this in tandem with the COVID-19 pandemic. It has resulted us in being dubbed a lost generation. And we are spending the prime years of our education and are entering the workforce during an economic cataclysm with social fragmentation, political unrest, and the continually impending threat of the climate crisis. But due to these challenges, I really believe that my generation sees sustainability as a holistic requirement that we must urgently demand in order to safeguard our future. But what allows us to congregate over this idea as to how we view sustainability is our uniquely united nature, like no previous generation could be, and not only in the way in which our ideas are or the way in which we view sustainability, but we're also connected very much tangibly. And that is from the globalization that we all know of, that being technology and digitization. And that has more than anything, I feel, served as a means for our intellectual and informational proliferation. And from this unprecedented exposure of growing up in this digital world, we now have so much at our disposal in terms of new perspectives and just experiencing the inherent differences between our lived experiences. And from this, I feel as if my generation has been able to develop an unparalleled macroscopic sense of empathy. And I also feel that this integration into the global community has given us a cosmopolitan perspective, a global citizenship, which I have seen spur into a cogent sense of more so global civic responsibility. And we all know the names such as Greta Thunberg and Malala Yousafzai, who are also members of the global youth, and they have become the faces of the movements that are aiming to protect our futures. And for myself as a youth leader, I can say that it has definitely catalyzed my own fervor to try and promote change in the world.
However, so Julia, I have a question for you.
Yeah, of course.
Tell us a little bit about the perspective of your generation and your experience on sustainability as a long-term trajectory in the business world, through finance and through opportunities for future employment and personal well-being and long-term growth of our economies. How has that been being absorbed and being worked with by your generations?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with, I feel as if the youth we have this like idealism, and the United Nations actually brought it up that, we have this part of the essence of our generation is the ability to kind of challenge the status quo, and we want to break the traditional tenets of our systems and really offer our new, fresh perspectives. So I feel like that is how we see sustainability kind of like coming into fruition in terms of like a business landscape. It's a new opportunity for transformation. It's a paradigm shift. And I feel as if that's completely the nature of Gen Z and millennials. I mean, we're so demographically and educationally diverse. And it's also, we really value, or even just like, Gen Z really values this idea of authentic experience. And I think sustainability is, in a sense, an authentic experience. It's very personalized and you connect to it in different ways. And I feel that's why more youth all over the world have been prioritizing social entrepreneurship. So not only, are we going into these more private sector enterprise ventures, focusing on those metrics of success, return on investment or risk, but we're also equally valuing the impact that'll drive and the implementation of the SDGs that serve to be kind of like a blueprint for our generation in terms of the different facets to what a dynamic and more inclusive world would look like. So I feel like we really value this integration now of sustainability and the private sector. Because in order to make a change, you need the necessary means to do so. You need that capital, you need that facilitator for mobilization. And I feel as if, capital markets, innovation, technology, like that's going to be kind of that catalyst that will allow you to make those changes and breaking those traditional tenets. So I feel as I see the potential for young professionals to contribute more tangibly and scalably to a greener and more inclusive global economy, just from, the way we view life and the way we kind of interact also as a generation.
Okay, great. Now, Peter mentioned earlier in his opening remarks that we're going to be facing lots of environmental impact issues going forward. And this is going to be certainly for the rest of my life, but beyond that, almost certainly for the rest of your generation's life as well. And how are younger people adapting to, for example, the pandemic type of not just economic, but social limitations when it comes to relationship and that sort of thing? I mean, I know that we've developed much better ways of communicating online and using technologies, but there's still the face-to-face human factor that has been left out of a lot of interaction over the last year. How are you focusing on that? How are you dealing with that?
I mean, I kind of ask myself the same question every day, but it's definitely a learning process. But I think a huge aspect of, being youthful is like being resilient. And I think going through these global hardships together almost makes it easier. And we're able to kind of tap into that resilience all the more because we're all sort of creating it's a relatable and connectable experience. But I feel as if, we've been fronted with these global crises such as, the climate crisis, societal tension, geopolitical terror. When our generation, first started, it was very early onset, but it's been accelerating, as we were growing up in the world. So I feel like having that global perspective and that macroscopic view on the dynamics of the world from a very early start has kind of almost given us a higher degree of adaptability because we're able to maybe, anticipate that there will be changes and that we need to manage our expectations in order to align with those changes. But I mean, I think, this global pandemic it's definitely unsurfaced a lot of, seemingly issues that we still have as a society and as a world. But I think it did grow our sense of community. And I think it also did, sustainable finance after COVID, during COVID has, the traction has been increasing. So I feel as if these topics of sustainability and inclusivity has only been growing from this. So, even though, we're trying to get used to these digital interactions and changes in education, changes in, starting a job completely virtually, I think, we're getting through it together and, we're going to continue seeking and enacting change in the world.
How are the folks in your generation collaborating with each other when it comes to opportunity around a more sustainable economy, a more sustainable community lifestyle? It seems that a lot of younger people, for example, have been leaving the large cities to try and find lifestyle outside of the cities that enables them to continue working in urban areas, but not necessarily living in them on a full-time basis. Are you seeing a lot? You and your community talking about, well, gee, when will young people be coming back, or when will people be be looking for additional ways to get out of the big urban areas on a regular basis? Again, relating back to Peter's comments about the idea that we'll almost certainly have other health issues like the pandemic going forward.
That is a great question. And from my personal experience, I've seen quite a balance. I think urban concentration is definitely growing just because I think, youth are valuing kind of like the density of opportunity that urban centers will offer. And also, just, I guess, the people that I'm often in contact with are very much focusing, within the private sector. So they're also kind of seeing themselves in urban centers. But I mean, I think a huge aspect of sustainability in terms of Gen Z is that authentic experience. We feel that, we all have a different personal connection to it. So that means we also have a personal solution. So whether it be staying in a city or whether it be kind of going more into suburbs or a rural area, I mean, that would be kind of, aligned with their personal take on how they can drive action. But something you highlighted in your question was kind of this idea of, I mean, I guess like behavioral, it's very much individual. This aspect of sustainability is like the lowest level you can go is how you live your day to day. And I feel as if millennials and Gen Z, they're very much, at least in my opinion, and through the collaboration that I've had, we're very much simplicity, like we're geared towards more simplicity. So, I mean, in terms of, professionalism or in terms of behavioral lifestyles, we're going to go towards more of what is simple, what is definitely most financially viable. So, I mean, whether that still be living in an urban center and that's the most access to opportunity you can get, or whether it is, making most of what you can beyond the outskirts of a more densely populated area. I think, I think it's all respective. And that's my personal take on that.
Okay. Okay. So I took you away from your planned remarks. If there's other things that you wanted to focus on,
No, thank you for the questions. I mean, I think a huge aspect of sustainability is that it's a circular conversation. It should be, people asking questions and kind of picking at people's brains on how they view this topic, because it manifests itself in different ways, just depending on, where you grew up or the things you were exposed to. And that's what I think, myself as a member of Gen Z, like that's why I feel sustainability is just so pertinent to life, is because it's just embracing differences, but also being united in commonalities. So, I mean, feel free to, please ask me any questions. And, on that note, I'm also happy, to connect offline and answer any questions that anyone else may have. But yeah, no, I mean, I think kind of going a little more into the private sector when I was choosing a career, and it was quite intimidating, to be honest, to leave college. I studied sustainable development. It was very high level, all conceptual, but the interconnectedness, and it was a very much like systems thinking approach. But I feel as if it didn't adequately prepare me to really know the limitations that one singular individual can have when driving impact. But I feel as if, the private sector really allows you to have that impact be scalable, and also just more feasible. So that's why I feel, more youth, whether they're, climate or sustainability conscious, I feel that's why they're really putting their sights on the private sector, is because they're able to, like see the change happen there. And yeah, but I mean, anywhere you can make an impact, whether it be more public sector or private sector. But something I actually do want to highlight in terms of that is, I spoke about how sustainability, we're really prioritizing maybe more enterprise corporate ventures. But in order to make that happen, and in order to actually have a more tangible impact, I feel from collaborating with other youth and, being a Gen Z member myself, this idea of longevity, because I mean, sustainability is very much like a future orientation. So you want to ensure that there's durability in our solutions. So I think that, within the financial services or technology or innovation, it's all about the longevity. And in order to actually foster that, you need to have a degree of intention and dedication. And we saw that power of what empathy and what solidarity can do, during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we do have, an incredible untapped ability to foster system-wide coordination and awareness. And I was listening last week to the COP26 and the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero conference, and they emphasize the same exact thing. I mean, it's all about collective action and cooperation over that of competition for financial institutions. And so I think that's another reason why millennials and Gen Z are really looking to the private sector, because we're all about producing synergies. We're all about transcending silos. And I think that that's the future of this industry. And that's why this industry needs more young people and just more youth. And I guess, just to maybe end my part on actionable items, ways that, you can do that is, I mean, this is a perfect example, including youth in an interactive nature. So whether it be a panel discussion or, just another platform of communication, or even just surveying the younger professionals within your entity, just to kind of get a feel for what their perspectives are or their views in terms of different strategies or actions to take, or also forming mentor-mentee relationships. I'm so grateful to have met Peter Fusaro about like 2 years now. And, he's been like such a wonderful resource for me just to learn about this integration of sustainability and the private sector, but also just an inspiration, to, keep on challenging the status quo and to keep on working towards your passions. So I guess like that's how I would end, always include the younger professionals in your conversations, because this is a collective effort.
Well, one more question that I have for you, and that is, in your experience, now that you're in the workplace, whether it's your firm or other firms that other people in your community, young people in your community are now experiencing, now that you're out in the private sector, how are companies that you're working for facilitating this type of approach to collaboration, continuity, system focus, larger perspective, lifestyle and work style combined? Are companies making the effort to support the drive that the younger generations have to live this way?
Yeah, I mean, I think the discourse on the global youth is definitely picking up traction. I mean, I think it's kind of early onset, but I've seen, just from my experience, limited experience in the private sector, but I felt included, honestly. I mean, I know that there's programming, there's a lot of upskilling opportunities. And I think like that's a great start, but I think also maybe just like penetrating younger generations as well. I mean, I'm a very young professional, recent college grad, but I think, enhancing market literacy in high school or even earlier on is going to speak to that longevity you need in creating solutions in the private sector. And I think, I mean, it's really inspirational for me as a young professional to see that there is a need and a desire to want to include youth in these efforts. And a recent former managing director from the World Bank, I saw this quote a few days ago, referenced youth as an engine of power and not just, a problem or a burden. So, and I think it's really important to remember that, even though we have a grand population, we're not just a statistic, and we are most definitely an opportunity or a potential. And I think it's just been a really great, awe-inspiring for me to have that be recognized. And, I look forward to the further developments and the further partnerships that are going to develop down the road, but intergenerationally, as we really aim to try and make change.
That's great. Well, thank you, Julia, so much for your comments this morning, and thanks to Peter for including Julia in our program today. It's really good to hear from the younger generations related to all of these issues that we're focusing on with so much energy and optimism going forward. So thanks a lot for your time.
Thanks, Paul. And thank you so much, Peter. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.